Vijay Mohan Quatra has mentioned that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has discussed the issue of attack on Hindu temples with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and also thanked him for the action taken against the perpetrators. Remember, these attacks were something that had dotted the entire terrain of Australia for the good part of last year, and also this year in March we'd seen several of those attacks happen. That was also a point of conversation in the bilaterals that Prime Minister Modi is having with Anthony Albanese. Let's listen in.
Attack on the temples and the activities of the other separatist elements. These were discussed between the two Prime Minister earlier also during Prime Minister Albanese's visit to India and today also. From the discussions last time till this time, the progress is clearly reflected in the fact that Honourable Prime Minister of India thanked Honourable Prime Minister of Australia for the action that the Government of Australia has taken, not just in making correct appreciation of the nature of such activities, but also against the elements which perpetrated such attacks. Besides, you would have clearly noticed when the Honourable Prime Minister of India said, and which was clearly appreciated by the Australian side, that India-Australia ties are very strong, very deep, very extensive, and we would not allow these friendly ties to be disrupted by such elements. Continue to take strong actions against such elements that want to disrupt the strong and deep ties and India-Australia partnership.
Let me bring in my colleague Abhishek Jha for more on this. Abhishek, this was something that was pretty much in the offing, because last time also when Anthony Albanese was back home in India, he had mentioned that strict action is going to be taken against the perpetrators who were responsible for these attacks. And now after this bilateral, Prime Minister Modi also raising that issue really means that there is going to be some very, very important, crucial work that is going to be done regarding that.
Of course, see, in the last time when Australian Prime Minister was in India, Prime Minister had publicly raised this issue of Khalistani separatists working in Australia. And since then, we have seen some action being taken by the Australian government, because now when Prime Minister was addressing this joint press conference, he said that he's happy with the action that the government of Mr. Albanese has taken in order to bring those chaos down. And he's also said that India and Australia, neither side would accept any ideology, any group, any individual or people who want to disrupt the strong ties that India and Australia are enjoying right now. So this is what both the Prime Minister have expressed there. And beside that, there were other whole gamut of bilateral ties that were discussed between the two Prime Ministers. Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra was detailing those discussions that happened on mining issues, on rare earth mineral exploration, energy transition, climate change. Of course, regional issues like Indo-Pacific, issue of strategic and security challenges are also discussed between the two sides. We know that India and Australia are also part of that Quad, which basically discusses the rule-based order in Indo-Pacific. So all aspects of bilateral relations, regional cooperation and global cooperation were discussed between the two Prime Ministers during these bilateral talks.
And Abhishek, do we know about what is the kind of action that is being planned on the perpetrators? Because the last set of attacks were only just a month ago, in fact, a couple of months back, where the most part of the 2022 was dominated by these attacks in Australia, where Khalistan elements were destroying and defacing temples there, and also the first part of 2023.
You see, one has to look deeper down the reason why these perpetrators or these elements are surging in a particular society, particular country. We have seen such separatists emerging in various countries in Europe, in London, in USA, and at almost everywhere there has been some sort of tacit support from the political class of that country also, which has led them grow, because they have some inkling to cash on the huge diaspora base of Punjabis and Sikhs who they think that they are part of these. They are sympathetic towards these Khalistani protesters or Khalistani separatists. So clearly, if we take example of what happened in yesterday in Sydney, where like about 30,000 Indian diaspora was very much present to seek to see Prime Minister Modi address them, and Anthony Albanese was also joined. So clearly, this is a message that larger, broader diaspora are not in support of these Khalistani elements or these separatist elements. In fact, they do not want any disturbance or any disruption in peace among their Indian community. And clearly, if the political class of any particular country sees that happening on ground, they would certainly distance themselves from these fringe elements, which is called separatist elements or anti-India elements or Khalistani elements in Australia, be it USA, Canada, or UK, in anywhere. So clearly, that message has gone is very strongly across political spectrum in Australia, because Prime Minister has been talking to shadow leader of opposition also in the morning, and there is a bipartisan support for India, bipartisan support for having a strong ties with Indian diaspora in Australia, because they do constitute a huge influence in terms of business, corporate, political class, vote bank, and if somebody can see that these vote bank or these influence or these business ties are not impacted by distancing themselves with these fringe elements or these vandalists group, then clearly the message will be loud and clear on
Abhishek,
the ground.
you're making an important point. I'm really sorry I'm interrupting you. We have to bring in Pathikrit Payne, who's also now joining us on the broadcast, security analyst. Pathikrit, where do you see the conversation from here on going? Now that even in the bilaterals between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Australian Prime Minister, Mr. Anthony Albanese, going to that very crucial aspect of the attack of Hindu temples in Australia, where do you see this moving from here on? Considering that point that my colleague Abhishek was also making, that the Khalistan supporters and sympathizers in Australia also form a crucial vote bank. What kind of action do you think we'll see? Is this going to be that there'd be no more referendums that are going to be allowed by the Australian administration? What is a step forward?
Well, I think it was just a few days back also there was a referendum which was supposed to happen in Australia, and it was struck down by the Australian authorities. So the template that has been taken by Government of India under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi is very, very right. First, there was this huge gathering of the diaspora which was addressed by the Prime Minister in the presence of the Australian counterpart, and the Australians actually saw that the Indian diaspora stands with India, with the Government of India. And therefore, the presumption that many countries and the political class of many countries we had that, appeasing the Khalistanis would akin to having more votes has been, broken. Of course, the Khalistani elements, the kind of ruckus they create in temples, they are not just attacking temples per se. They are attacking the very idea of India. They're attacking the Government of India. They're trying to send a message to Government of India. So it was only a matter of time that the Government of India will take it very strongly with all these governments, especially some of these European countries, and in Canada and US also we have seen some disturbances, and of course in Australia, that this is not right and this has to be dealt with. For a country like Australia, which is now expecting very deep relationship with India in case of business, in case of the freedom of the Indo-Pacific region, they cannot beyond this take the Indians for granted. So I think the Khalistani elements which have been propped up by the ISI and the deep state of Pakistan, the message has gone very clear to the Australians that if you want good relation with India, if you want a free trade agreement, if you want defense cooperation, if you want more convergence in other areas of security and business, then you have to pay heed to the concerns of Government of India and India at large. Even if you talk about vote bank, look, you want to have a vote bank does not necessarily mean that the vote bank will disturb others and you have to remain silent. That is a message. I think government has made it very clear that your votes of so-called those, Khalistanis doesn't mean that you allow them to do ruckus. Would they have allowed ruckus like this to be created on, say, Christian, religious places or religious places of other countries? No. Absolutely. That is where I think the Indian government, the kind of action that has been taken against